Hi, I'm David Smith. I'm Head of Faculty of Film Art and Creative Technologies at Dún Laoghaire Institute of Art, Design and Technology. And I'm also Creative Director and Principal of Atelier Projects, a small design studio in Dublin. I understand your question, and it refers to the Year of Irish Design Identity when we drew on folk art or Celtic symbols. The obvious shorthand in creating a cultural identity is, I think, to draw on your history. I think it's an easy solution, and it is also gives you the maximum opportunity that if you can bring to bear folk art or traditional art or symbols that are associated with a culture, it becomes very familiar. And I think when something is familiar, it is easier for somebody to understand. I think the challenge is to make something familiar but progress as well. And I think in the project that we discussed, the Year of Irish Design, my frustration as a designer was a consequence of ignoring folk art, ignoring traditional symbols, ignoring a vocabulary that was familiar. And then when I understood that that this was a good foundation, I was able to evolve this. Is it possible to create a wholly new and original and distinct identity that will be embraced by everybody without drawing on these symbols or references? I would like to think maybe in a new nation that is certainly leaving behind a complex or difficult history, and that they don't have authentic or genuine symbols or histories of their own. I think there's an opportunity there, but I think tradition can be overwhelming, and that I think it puts a lot of pressure on designers to refer to it. Although the Dutch government, only in the last week, they redesigned the Netherlands identity, and it is purely typographic. It is just NL. However, if you look very, very closely, there is a tulip. Okay, and you look closely, you'll see the tulip. It's almost like the FedEx sign, and you look again and you see the arrow. The tulip is there, and it's the most obvious and cliched symbol of the Netherlands, yet this is a very original, forward-looking identity. So I think it is possible, but I think bringing tradition along is a good thing for the graphic designer. It can be your friend. It can be the key that unlocks the conversation, because somebody would see it as being familiar. It's very interesting that you asked me about motion, because we're not motionographers. We have no animators in our studio, and it's not part of our practice. All of the motion that is in our work is used for two things. It is used to advance the understanding of the system. So our interns will all have digital motion skills and animation skills. Our solution is never motion first. We can't do it because we can't support that as a practice. So we can't support digital and web as a solution, even though the client demands it. We have to work with others. So in many instances, we use motion as a way of demonstrating the breadth of opportunity, demonstrating the thinking and the concept, because it's the quickest way to show all of the possibilities, and they can see step by step how we've arrived at something. So motion is hugely important in helping us clarify and articulate our concepts, but we unfortunately, because of the size of our office and the expertise, we can't expand or extend that. There are huge opportunities, both in our own work and obviously beyond, starting from a position of, even if you're concerned with print, to extend into motion. I think there is an expectation that it is integrated and is a significant aspect of all communication design. Less so in books, but I mean, if you're doing a brand identity, or there's other communications, social media, Instagram, all of these different channels require different considerations. So I think it's vitally important that you design not primarily focused on motion, but you give due consideration to the opportunity that it presents. Unfortunately, in my practice, I don't have the expertise. Neither myself or my colleague can do it. When we have the need, we will engage our interns or our associates to do this. But if I was to hire another designer, I would hire a typographic designer that had motion skills. That would be it, because I think we would really grow and evolve, so I think it's vitally important. I think that we spoke earlier about how we consume information, and we spoke about shorthand, and so a digital image can give us a message, a digital image that's interactive can give us another experience, and something that is animated can actually be a stronger memory or mnemonic for something. So actually everything that allows something to stick, a concept or a memory or whatever, everything that enhances that, I believe should be considered in a project. So I think it's very rare that any designer can create, certainly within the realm of identity or visual identity, give consideration to producing something that has no animated or motion aspect. I think so, yeah. I think you have to deal with obviously the media, and you've obviously kind of space and time factors that come into thinking about typography. But again, if you look at some of the screens that I showed, the simple linear elements, like these are 2D patterns that show rhythm and time in 2 dimensions. They're static representations of time and motion, and so actually it is already being taught. The switch to translate that into actual motionography is something that has to happen, you know. So, but we deal with concepts of time. A book is read over time, you know. So the presentation of typography, we have scale, and we have kind of rhythm, and we have pace. So we have motion and musical factors already that impact upon 2D design, if you will, or editorial design. So actually, the switch to translate that to motion, I don't think it's such a big step. It's obviously, there's a technical change, but conceptually, I think typography, it's an easy translation. I think one of the things that we often talk about is certainly in typography and pages, and there was, I showed a lot of books, but I didn't show the interior of the books. Okay, so but we use, I'm not going to say a lot of layering, but we would often use 2 or 3 planes within a book. Okay, so if you think about it from motionography, it's depth, okay, and it's space, and the different typographic planes move at different paces within the book. So that is very, very important. So often we look at page spreads or covers of books as a key frame. So we use the language of cinema when we show something, and the cover is a key frame, but there is also something after this and something before it, and they also become factors in actually how we design. So even though we are print designers, the language of cinema or film is very, very important. You know, keyframe 1, keyframe 12, and then in between we have kind of the rhythm and pace of that, and then they join up again. If you look at the fundamental grid and the typographic decisions, the macro and micro decisions that you make, and you have your structure and your foundation, that becomes a repeatable item, and that is obviously just editorial design. You repeat a sequence and it works. When we bring in the layers, that actually allows for the experimentation. So if you imagine the basic editorial structure of a book, and you design it, and this moves at 12 frames a second, and then the layer on top, which is a graphic element, or it is a piece of color or a larger image, this passes over the pages at 6 frames per second. So they're passing each other at different times, and we would do this a lot. We would look at this kind of idea at every 12 pages. There is a graphic intervention, which you might call as being experimental or breaking the rules, but it's not. It's just catching up with the other things. It's completely, and it is this kind of tiered structure. So the actual, when you look at the book, you don't see it, but if you analyze the book, you will see that there is four layers here with different timings kind of working, and that will be a way of looking at it. Otherwise it becomes very repetitive, and the experimentation requires you, or the difference, take a hammer to it and break all the rules. But we don't. We have a very consistent foundation, and that means that the book is totally coherent from one page to page 200, and it's just these moments where the timing comes through that you see the difference. Much better to explain and show you through a book than try and articulate it. Variable type is not new to me. When I was studying type design, multiple master fonts were all the rage, and so we were all crazy, you know, kind of making our multiple master fonts. And I think it's exciting. I think certainly from a motion point of view and the possibilities, but I think, you know, I trained as a type designer and I studied type design, but I saw the opportunity that multiple master fonts made for, you know, creating large families, creating greater scales of contrast and opportunity, and that's fantastic. But that is now established. I'm probably a little bit of a purist in that I would rather have a really good typeface that had the levels of contrast that are required. Maybe, you know, you go from a very ultra light to a fat, and I have adequate contrast without having to look at distortion and other elements. So the variables that are available to me now, I'm less likely to use them in the context of print. I mean, it would feel a little bit forced for me. I would rather just use a very good typeface with all the scales and all the contrast that I need in the typeface itself, than actually having to pull and push and find it myself. Maybe in poster or cover design, yes, but I can't see, because I'm not an animator, I don't see those kind of possibilities. So in time maybe.